Olá, boa tarde para todo mundo. O Dan Saffer ainda não me respondeu. Na verdade, a gente combinou tudo semanas atrás e eu não sei o que é feito dele. Ele falou comigo na segunda-feira e agora, enfim, vamos descobrir o que é feito do moço. Pode ser que eu seja surpreendida pelo esquecimento dele, né? Mas tudo bem também, faz parte da vida, né? Principalmente quando as pessoas estão fazendo isso de total boa vontade e tudo mais. Também pode ser um momento para a gente conversar, então eu vou ficar aqui de boa, esperando pelo Dan. Eu só queria lembrar para vocês que eu mudei a data do linguagem de negócios para não designers, desculpe, linguagem de negócios para designers, para o dia 20. Então, se alguém tiver interesse nisso, no site está lá mudado para o dia 20. Então, são 4 noites, dia 20, 22, 27 e 29 de outubro 2020. Está aberto. O pessoal que estava inscrito teve problemas de trabalho e tal, então a gente passou para o dia 20, o que dá oportunidade para aqueles que não fizeram a sua inscrição de fazer. Não sei o que é feito de Dan Saffer, gente, não sei mesmo. Então, já mandei, é que são 8 e pouco da manhã, né, lá, então preciso descobrir se o cara acordou. Eu mandei 5.000 e-mails, falei com ele ontem, falei com ele na segunda-feira, mas vai saber o que está rolando na vida dessa pessoa, né? Se ele der o cano, a gente dá um jeito depois, né? Faz tudo acontecer outra data, né? Não sei o que fazer. Alguém quer fazer alguma pergunta, falar alguma coisa? Eu estou aqui aberta para questionamentos. Oh, meu Deus, cadê esse homem? Estou aqui, mandando 5.000 e-mails para essa pessoa. Né? Reza a lenda que ele tem um alerta aqui, reza a lenda que ele tem todos os links. Vai saber, né? Vai saber que se ele está esperando por algum alerta do sistema para dizer para ele entrar, né? Então, também não sei dizer o que é que está acontecendo. Eu sou daquelas pessoas que já está 200 horas antes, né? Eu sou assim. Mas eu não sei como são as outras pessoas. E aí eu fico na dependência e nem preciso dizer que eu não faço festa de aniversário para não ter um ataque cardíaco, né? Esperando que as pessoas cheguem. Ai, Deus do céu, cada um, né? De um jeito diferente. Sei lá o que acontece com esta pessoa. Ele só usa Twitter, não usa Instagram, usa LinkedIn, mas usa, sei lá, eu mais ou menos. Vamos ver. Eu pedi para ele chegar antes, mas não chegou. Então, não sei o que falar. Vocês querem fazer perguntas, gente? Enquanto aqui a gente está aqui e espera... Vou esperar uma meia horinha para ele chegar. Mas, sei lá, 15 minutos. Mas, se não chegar, eu vou cancelar. E pronto, né? C'est la vie! Acontece! Já falei com tanta gente legal aqui, né? Indy Young, maravilhosa, um doce de pessoa... com profissionais que têm livros e são autores, né? Então não é por falta de ter gente legal. Estava querendo falar com o Dan, mas não sei se ele vai aparecer. Eu pedi. Lembrei na segunda-feira, ele tem isso na agenda, e tem isso, mandei não sei quantos mil e-mails pedindo para ele aparecer. 15 minutos antes, 15 minutos que não ocorreram, e nós estamos aqui, né? Ai. Pois é, né? A iniciativa tem que ter acabativa, sabe? Eu sou daquelas pessoas que precisam. Mas não é só a iniciativa, né? Ele é meu amigo. O que eu sei é que ele anda meio deprimido. Ele não anda muito legal, sabe? Não mesmo. Apesar de ser, e vocês veem, né? Uma pessoa de sucesso que tem 4 livros escritos, já teve estúdio, né? É uma pessoa que tem uma família maravilhosa e tal, e às vezes às vezes a pessoa não acha, né? Às vezes a pessoa não acha que a vida está suficientemente boa. É interessante pensar, né, que alguém tão bem-sucedido possa ter momentos em que ele não está bem. E eu acho que isso é tão, ao mesmo tempo que é triste, é reconfortante a gente saber que todos nós pensamos e sentimos da mesma maneira. Tem indicadores externos que nos dizem que está tudo bem, né? Porque a sociedade acha que aquilo é ótimo, e lá dentro da gente aquilo não é o suficiente. Anyway, né? Deixa eu passar uma mensagem. É isso, da vida, né? O Dan passou por algumas empresas muito interessantes, uma delas, não sei se vocês conhecem toda a obra dele, né, de livros, mas eu acho que é importante conhecer, né? Ele tem 4 livros escritos, 4 livros, né? Designing Devices, Designing Interactions, que mais? Microinteractions, e tem mais um, que agora não estou lembrando. Precisa ver, né? Designing Devices, Designing Interactions, Designing Devices, Microinteractions e tem mais um. Espera aí que eu estou... Livros. Deixa eu ver aqui, livros. Né? Designing Interfaces. Tudo 1900 de 2009 a 2013, ele foi Gestural Interfaces, isso também, né? Aqui chegou Artistream. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
People are so excited to talk with you. And I was telling them that I tried to reach you through many digital channels. We are using here to talk with people through WhatsApp, and it lowers the anxiety, but it increases the stress. However, this is the Brazilian way of doing things. And I was, oh my God, I don't have Dan's WhatsApp. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So thank you for coming. And you're most...
I'm not a big WhatsApp user, so this is perfect.
Here is a friend called Daniel too, and he's saying, "Oh my God, I love you. we are so excited to have you here." Here in the comments. Please feel welcome by all of us, and we want to talk about your career, your books, and everything else. I will look at the questions that people have. And how are you right now, Dan?
I am good, trying to survive these crazy times, just like everyone else. We are, of course, on the verge of another insane election here in the United States. So we're all kind of waiting to see what happens there, trying to do our best to get out the vote and everything else. So yeah, it's a lovely day here in San Francisco. So that's great.
Well, I've heard about being not only about the COVID-19 getting at home and everything else, but you have a big weather problem during this year, right?
We
Fire
do. We do.
everywhere.
We
Please.
have, yeah, we have a lot of wildfires. So not only have we had COVID, where we have to stay inside, or we have to stay distance, but we've had a lot of wildfires. And the wildfires have made the air quality so bad that you have to stay inside. So not only can we, the one thing that we had, which was going out and, being outside, was kind of taken away from us too. So, but luckily today is great. So it has not been as bad as it has been. We had that famous orange sky day. I don't know if any of you saw that, where the whole sky was this very deep orange, and it was darker at noon than it was early in the morning. And that was just, are we living in Blade Runner times now? So very strange.
I believe so. Blade Runner times. Also some kind of here it's kind of Mad Max times. We have
for sure
gangs everywhere, and they are taking over the city, and I think it will get worse, but that's how the future unveils.
We're all in our different versions of dystopian novels now, I guess. So,
let me ask you a question. I saw that you have 4 books since you wrote since 2009 and 2013. It means a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and a lot of research before. I can, when I read your books, I remember, and I see on your text that you did a lot of research. Tell me about your creative thing. Let me know.
I mean, with the books, I knew with every the nonfiction book, you usually start with an outline and a first chapter, and that you say, okay, here's what I need to cover, and then you look at the outline and you say, wow, I don't know a lot of this stuff. and so then it's a process of like doing a lot of research chapter by chapter, of being like, okay, what don't I know about design strategy, and who could I talk to that would point me towards that? Or who do I know that knows something about touchscreen targets? Who might that be? Or where can I find information about the perception of your eye? Like, so there's a lot of like, how do you break this down? And then of course, as you're writing, you're like, something will come up and you'll be like, wow, I thought I knew that. And then you're like, ooh, actually, I don't know that. And so then you have to go and do more research. So yeah, writing a nonfiction book is I would say mostly a research project, because you are moving back and forth between writing and research, just to get the best product at the end too. Just like when we are building a regular design product. So yeah, it's a lot of hat shifting, and of course the best way to put off actually doing writing is to do more research into something, even though you may only need like 2 lines for it. You could spend a long time researching everything there is to know about a topic. So
it's a learning project too, because you're learning too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the stuff is like, I learned a lot just from writing the books. And of course, I forget half of it as soon as I've published the book too. Like it, so I have, occasionally, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, use my own books as reference books, like looking up things. Like, oh yeah, that's how that works. Oh, right.
A guy here, I don't know his name because he has an avatar, and Cego Manco, põe teu nome, pelo amor de Deus. I'm speaking in Portuguese because otherwise the translation is not good. He's asking, considering the fact that people read even less nowadays, how crucial are the microinteractions for the success or failure of products, and how to think micro interactions for services?
I mean, I think that micro interactions are always important. Even if I'm not sure what the question about reading is, like, is it the fewer people are reading books, or in general, or fewer people are reading copy? Either way is I still think micro interactions are everywhere. They're everything. If you think about your phone, or this little device or something like that, where it's, how do you start to interact with it? Well, the first thing you do is turn it on, and that's the micro interactions. So they're not going away. They're always going to be there. So I still think they're always going to be important. And then how to think about them for services is a really interesting question that came up sort of after after I wrote the book. A lot of librarians and stuff came up to me and said, oh, this is how we think about the library, or this is how we think about just designing services. It's all these little micro moments that you don't, that you normally don't think about, like, oh, taking a number. How do you get a librarian's attention? Where do you go to find a book? All the little moments. And then and you can think about this for your retail store. So you go into your local, Starbucks or something like that. Like, how do you queue in line? Is there something, how do you buy? How do you purchase really fast? How do you order? How do you see the order? I mean, there's a million ways that you can use the same structure of micro interactions to design different moments in a service. And the big thing with services is often these what they call the kind of hero moments, and that those you can be, and those you can spend your all your micro interactions, money on, or your time on. It's like, what is the most important thing? What's the most important thing that has to happen, or how can this service feel very personalized? Like at Starbucks or your coffee shop, if they remember your name, that feels like, oh, hey, they know me, they know my order, and that feels like a little moment of magic. And that's a micro interaction. That's a little, it doesn't have anything to do with the overall service. Like, you're still going to get your coffee, but it's still like, it's a little moment of magic. And to me, that's what micro interactions are all about, like making little moments of magic.
Okay. Talking about magic, I remember that at some point you were working for a robotics company. And it was, for me, it was like, oh my God, I wish I had the chance to talk, to work in a place like that, because this is the future. And it was a while ago. I remember it was I don't know, 5 years ago, something.
It was like 4 years ago now. Yeah. So
And
yeah, I mean, robotics. I actually have the robot here. It rolls around my house now. That I think I have one of the 250 that were made, and so yeah, so it rolls around, bugs my dog, those kinds of things.
Pixel, as far as I remember,
Pixel, my dog, yeah.
Pixel, your
So,
dog.
um, but yeah, I mean, robots are very much all about micro interactions for things like being able to, like how can you tell if it's listening to you? Those kinds of things. You know, what does it do when it responds? Yes, it understands. There's, or what happens when it encounters something that it doesn't know. Lots of that kind of stuff. I mean, we actually discovered one of the crazy things we discovered with the robot was, it can't just sit silently in a room just looking around because that's really creepy. So you need to have a little moment where it's like it's like looking around or is whistling. That's what we have it like hum a little tune. It blinks to let you know that, hey, I'm still I'm just thinking or just sitting here. So we had to have a moment that was all about being idle, and getting back to kind of this idea of services. Like a robot is like, it's a service that's in a product that's inside another service or something. So it's like this like giant wrapped up burrito of product and service, where you can't tell, like, oh, is something, it, like, there's the whole service of owning the robot, and then there's what the robot does for you, and then there's the things that the robot is. And so you have to kind of be designing at all three levels all at once, and that's really, really challenging. It's really fun too if you ever get a chance to design a robot, and a lot of us, I think, will, because I think there's going to be a lot more of them. There's going to be a lot more of them that just, the technology is still maturing. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be one of those things where, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to start seeing a lot more of them. It's just right now, the technology is, still, it's getting better, like literally every day, but it's still not quite there yet. And people's expectations,
people's expectations are high. And I was about to say that I bought during COVID. I bought my first robot for home to clean the floor. And at the first moment, I fell in love. And at some point, he didn't do what I was expecting, and I was really angry. And this sort of feelings about a robot, it's something, right? And it's something real.
Oh, for sure. I mean, having something that, moves around in your house, you automatically attribute like autonomy to it. Like it's really smart. It can do things for me. And yeah, I mean, the expectations from movies and television and everything else are extremely high. I want R2D2 or BB-8, in my house right now. Like, but that's just, we're just not there yet. And yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of stories about people getting very attached to their particular unit. I know people have, there's stories where people have sent their Roombas back to get them serviced. They've broken down, and iRobot's like, well, this is so broken, we'll just send you a new one. And they're like, no, we want that one. This is our robot. This is our, we want this one back. So people get attached to. I mean, we name them. Like I have names for, the one that vacuums. I have a name for the one that does the floor, the hardwood floors. Like, so yeah.
I have a name for a car.
Exactly. I think, things that move become, are, we tend to attribute characteristics and things to them. And cars, autonomous cars, what are they going to be? I mean, except for giant robots. They're just, how those are designed in the future, when you won't have to drive, when you don't have to drive them, like how those interact with you and communicate with you, I think is going to be very robot like. So that'll be really interesting.
Someone said two questions, but before those questions, I have one thing to say. I was reading an academic paper from Japanese professors saying that all the robots that mimic human facial expressions shouldn't be. They did a usability test or something like that, saying that they shouldn't be as close as humans, because humans don't like robots to be that close to to show the feelings the way we show. They should be robots, and we have to know that. I don't know which state of art they are, which point they are in the state of art of mimicking expressions, facial expressions of feelings. But I feel creepy when I see whatever you have on YouTube doing like that. It's like, oh my God, this is a robot. I'm scared.
Yeah, I mean that's the famous, Uncanny Valley, the things that look kind of human, but really are creepy. I mean, that are kind of zombie like, or that are just, like weird dolls. But yeah, I mean, some of them are, the state of that technology is getting so good that it really looks human like. And yeah, I mean, I think we are at this weird time where both robots and like things like automated voices and stuff have gotten so good that it's very easy to fool people into thinking that they're interacting with human beings. And so, do we need some kind of rules around do robots need to self-identify, or bots self-identify, like, hey, you're speaking to a robot right now, like those kinds of things. So just so that people set their expectations correctly, like, oh, this isn't a real human. But I think that's, I mean, I agree. Like, I feel like robots should be more robotic, like, for lack of a better word, that they should have that I'm not sure why there's this push to get robots that look, that are very Android like. I could see doing that for hands and stuff like that, because we've tailored our entire built world works for people with arms and legs, and those kinds of things. But then like facial expressions, I don't, it is sort of helpful to know, like, what if a robot is thinking or doing those kinds of things. But there are plenty of ways to do that without having an actual face that's like, am I thinking? So
yeah, crazy. No, it's crazy. Anyway, Mariana is asking, when working on a project, what's the right time to think about microinteractions in the process?
So a couple different places I've found. I mean, the first is kind of when you're thinking about the main the big project at the very beginning. It's like, well, what is the trying to figure out, like, what are the micro interactions with this feature or with this product, kind of calling them out, and then figuring out, like, what are the what are the ones that are going to be really valuable? So an example is like a radio. So like, oh, I'm going to design this this radio or this like music playing app. Well, the biggest thing you're going to do is like press play or press pause or turn up the volume. So and if it's an actual radio, turn it on off. So thinking, so at least at the beginning, saying, okay, here's a couple big moments that I need to nail. Here's a couple things that are like, oh, and then kind of as you start to get like deeper into the product, I mean, I usually find that I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff, like in the I want to say post wireframes, like into like as I start to get into prototyping, I think that's the real time where I'm really starting to play with them, because I'm like, oh, how's this button work, or how does this thing slide? What's the animation here? How does this slide up, or how does this go down? Those kinds of things. I'm like, what's that look like, or how does that feel like? And then sometimes, it's like, oh, I discover them kind of at the end, or like after user testing. It's like, oh, that when I press this button and this thing goes away, like, I don't, the user's like, well, I don't know what happened there. And they're like, oh, I guess I have to make something clearer with audio, or with an animation, or something, something else like that. That's like, okay, how can I make this little moment is obviously important to people because they're like confused by it, and it's something that they're trying to do. So how can I make that moment better? So I think those are the big three places for me to focus on microinteractions.
And how to measure microinteraction success, Dan?
Oh, this one's really tricky. I mean, it really depends on the kind of product you're working on, and the level of depth that you can get to. Like at Twitter, when I was there, we could get down to like super deep, like, oh, are more people, like, let's say I'm gonna imagine, like, oh, there's the like button, the heart button, like, and let's imagine that I put some animation on it, or it does something. So you could track, like, oh, hey, are more people clicking on it now, or are more people engaging with the content, or more people replying afterward? I mean, for some things it's really simple, like, oh, a real classic microinteraction is logging in, like, oh, are more people able to log in without problems, or are more people able to are fewer people using I forgot my password. There's all kinds of like little things like that. But yeah, I think you're looking for I mean, it also depends on the microinteraction. Like, sometimes you're looking for more engagement. Sometimes you're looking for like a smoother, more efficient, streamlined thing. So sometimes you can be like, oh, completion of task is one, or time spent on task, stuff like that. If you're looking to like streamline something, so there's a lot of ways to do it. There's a whole chapter in the book where I tried to kind of go into that. I think it might be at the end, like it's like an appendix or something like that. And I think that the ability to track stuff has gotten way better in the 6 years that I've done this. So there's probably tons of ways to look at micro-interactions now, like across everything. Again, depending on what it is and what the product is. I mean, since almost everything is hooked up to the web now, and you can get analytics about just about anything. How often are people using this? And then of course, then there's the general surveys. I mean, ideally, your suite of micro interactions makes the product better, and so sales are up, or adoption is up, or or complaints to customer service are down, kind of big things that business really cares about. I mean, that stuff is, that's the ideal goal, right? Is you're making people happier with your product and able to do their jobs, or whatever they're doing, their jobs, their leisure time, whatever, better. And so if people are more satisfied in general with the product, then that's a big
go
win.
up.
Sales go up, exactly. Sales, adoption, retention, your monthly average users, all those things, just from small product tweaks sometimes.
Okay. One thing that I was thinking during your speech is that most of the time that we feel satisfied with a new product is when we see micro-interactions that are actually the language we already know. Let's say when we had a radio during the 30s, we had a dial. We had to turn up and down doing this on the button. And at some point in the 90s, we started to play, in the 80s, we started to play DVDs, which is something that looks like now everything, the little arrow. In the 90s, we had the video player with the arrow. So the arrow means we are playing something. And now everything we do that's playing have this little arrow. The thing is, if we move to another technology, pretty much like virtual reality or enhanced reality somehow, how we will deal with the new micro interactions or / new language in this environment? What do you think about it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, in some sense, we do bring old metaphors into new domains. The play button is one, or the pause button. When it turns into pause, there's these two lines, and that was where these two bars came up in old tape players to stop the tape. No one remembers that anymore, but I think but we've still kept moving that from domain to domain. And I think we'll get new metaphors as we move into different things. I mean, I think we got them when we started moving more to touchscreens, pinch zoom, or those kinds of things where it's like, tapping to open, or double tapping, those kinds of things are things that now are part of the interaction design lexicon. But yeah, as we move into AR, VR, what does that look? What does that look like? And I know there's a lot of people currently working to figure that out. Are you still pressing a play button in space, or is, or how do you do that? Is it, or do you say play? There's all kinds of things that I think people are thinking about and working on, and we just don't know. I mean, weird stuff survives decades. Like the save icon looks like an old floppy disk from 30 years ago. Like, nobody knows what that is anymore. Even I used to own those, and I'm like, what is this? Like, why is this the metaphor that we're still using? It has nothing to do with what we actually do. But until something better comes along and becomes widely adopted, we get stuck with the old metaphor. And I think that's actually okay. Now that I think about it, I think that's actually okay. I mean, it's, especially when you're trying to figure out a new domain, the more, cognitive hooks that you can kind of put into it, the more understanding you can get. I mean, like, think about, folders on your laptop. There's no folders on your laptop. That's just that's a metaphor that we've put so that we can understand what's happening. So it's just a way to help us comprehend a new system, in a way that, and using kind of what we already know, like mapping that back onto something new.
Flavio says, I have a developer in my team who never saw a floppy disk till 3 weeks ago when I showed him one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, what, I don't even know if I probably have one in like a box or something around here from 20 years ago, but who's using that?
I have zip disks. I have zip. I have floppies. I have the big ones and everything.
Jazz, yeah.
My daughter told me, Mom, are you planning to have a museum? Because I have all the old stuff.
Well, it's fun. I mean, I don't know if they still do it, but the Macs used to have a picture of a hard drive as the indicator of like what is and it's like, who knows what a hard drive, like, I was like, what is this a picture of? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, sometimes in car iconography you see like a picture of a car engine, and you're like, okay, it's
totally crazy.
Like, no one, there's a very small subset of people that are like able to like realize, oh, that's that are technical enough to realize that's what this is.
Well, I feel I see here which Andrea Hero is saying, but he's saying something about buttons and interactions, but gestures. Gestures are something that depends a lot on the cultural background of the person. Do you believe so, that it depends on the
person? Oh yeah. There's a lot of cultural. There's a lot of cultural baggage with gestures. I have a book here that's like gestures around the world, and how this gesture is very offensive in Italy, or even something like the stop gesture is very offensive to people in certain places. So they're like, the same gesture can have different meanings. So you got to be careful about that. And then there's like gestures like, in a lot of the West, we have like, the head nod for yes and the shake for no. But in India, they have something that's in between that's the like Bob, that's like right, that's like so
Yeah.
how do you interpret that, so I think that is something that is uh I think that is something that is to be like aware of. Now, that being said, I think there's a number of gestures that we can all agree are pretty, like, thumbs up is generally, or thumbs down is now very well known. Um, I think there's a number of different ones that especially the ones that like we didn't have before, like pinch to zoom and stuff like that. Like that was a gesture that was made up. So and now we all kind of know that that's the way to do things.
Yeah. He's asking too, why do you think that gestures interactions are still not so common? Why is that?
I mean, I think there's probably a couple reasons for it. One is I think gestural interactions are common in a couple places that are now
Cell phone,
common,
for example.
phones. And but I think he may be talking about like gestures in space too.
Yeah, I think so.
And like there are places where like now putting your hands under a sink or putting your hands, like in public restrooms and stuff like that. I think gestures and presence are becoming ubiquitous. You never have to, almost it's rare that you have to touch something anymore to get water or anything out in like a public restroom. But I think what I think is interesting is now like I'm noticing a lot of these home devices are now being built with motion detectors already built into them. And so I think we're going to see a lot more presence activated or presence deactivated things coming really soon. Like with robots now, like I can set up my robot now so that it syncs with the objects in the house. So if it thinks that I am not here, it can come and go to vacuum all around. If it thinks I'm not, if it's not detecting anything. And then the other thing is the other part of it, I think, is cameras. I think is the other thing. Like I think there's a lot of I don't know. I think there's a lot of completely justified worries about privacy and stuff like that for installing cameras in public places, to do more gestural stuff. I think it's also hard to do gestural stuff in public. It's a little it just feels stranger to do it, even when you're trying to like, there's a sensor somewhere and you're like waving to try to turn on the lights or something like that. Like,
open the door and you're like, oh my God, I am in the wrong place because the door doesn't open. Something like that.
Right, exactly. I mean, my really funny example is, you're in a bathroom stall in a bathroom and the lights go out and it's like, oh no, like turn the lights back on, somebody, no, but I keep the thing that I really am hoping for are and I think this could be one of the dreams of kind of AR and other kinds of small technologies is being able to do small things, small gestures, small kind of more personal gestures in space, like right in front of you, that make more freeform gestural interactions something that's more common. I don't think we're there yet. Like I just don't, we're not all wearing, special glasses or special contact lenses yet. But I think I think that, again, that technology will eventually come, I think, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah. One of the things that someone was complaining with me was about the TV sets, where you can do this gesture and it turns up the volume or slow down or decreases. And the thing is that sometimes you come from the couch, whoop, and the gesture is interpreted like put the volume up, which is completely wrong.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is like I mean that's I think one of the hardest parts of any kind of gestural system is this idea of how do you not get false positives like that one. I mean, I remember we were trying to do a system where you could swipe, kind of swipe in the air to like change channels like this. But watch my hand. So I swipe, boop, and then I do it again, but I pull back to do that. And it kept interpreting it like, oh, it would move and then move back. Yeah, because it would just follow my, So, I mean, you can have it do that if it just like, oh, it just ignore that move, but it's just tricky to code for.
You were talking about bathrooms, and one of the things that really makes me mad is that sometimes I want to wash my hands and I don't know where to place properly my hands to turn it on, and I keep trying and I feel so dumb and inappropriate.
Oh yeah.
I've become mad with that.
But again, you're blaming yourself. Blame the user. Like, why isn't there it's either got to be extremely clear where the sensor is, or B, the sensor's got to be tuned enough so that you don't have to care about. As long as you put your hands in the sink, it works, right? So that you're not like trying to do all these different gestures to get the thing working. I mean, the problem is that sensors also get out of tune after a while, and so like in things that are installed, sometimes they break down, just like especially if they're being used a lot. So so they could be tuned perfectly, but a year later it may not be so great when you go to put your hands into there.
The other thing about the gestures and voice, especially voice, is that we humans survive it because we live it in packs. And in packs, we were better than alone in the wild, right? To live in groups, we needed to create some sort of language that showed respect and showed some kind of courtesy to the others. And now, I remember that a couple of years ago, I was with my sister and nephew in the US. They live in the US. And I told my nephew, don't talk with, I can't remember, it was one of those voices. Yeah. And I told, don't talk with her like that because you're being rude. And he told me, but it's a machine. And I told him, you know what? You will get used of treating everybody like that without any respect and courtesy. And I know that now every single voice device have a lot of features to avoid people to be rude with them. What do you think about that?
I mean, it is really interesting, like how I mean, I think what's going to be really interesting going forward is what, and this is something that we talked about with the robot. Like as you interacted with it, if you interacted with it in a particular way over time, did that alter its personality so that maybe even temporarily to kind of change it. So if you were like mean to the robot all the time, like maybe it was sad or kind of moped around or those kinds of things, and I think the same could happen with the other voice kind of stuff too. If you're like curt with it, or if you're polite, it does, it either could unlock some new, if you're polite with it, it can unlock some special features, or stuff like that, or it treats you better, it does those kinds of things. I think almost like it becomes like a lot of times, when I think about like household objects coming to life, I think, like, oh, what about like the house elves in Harry Potter? Like, you can have some are treated well, and some are abused. So, but I think it's really interesting. Like, I mean, I kind of think that it's a little, I don't know. I saw a lot of those articles, and I was like, I wonder if this is overblown, where people, will take the way that they treat, devices and do the same with people. But I don't, as our devices become more human-like in their responses, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, and the thing with gestures is the same, because when you go to Paris and the French say pardon, pardon, it's aggressive anyway for us. Or
Right.
the Italians doing this or this, that most people don't understand. I have an Italian family, and I saw, this is aggressive. And if you learn gestures or use gestures that are aggressive when you go to the wild, let's say, you are not behaving properly. And here we have Teresa saying, I don't know if you already talked about it, but what do you think about the movie Her and its human-computer interactions? Is that a close reality? What do you think about that?
That's a great movie. I think it's a really, I think the whole idea, I think it showed off this idea of, hearables in a way that we hadn't really seen a lot of. And I think, I think that's kind of the next generation of, these are, could very well, have something like that. And if you look at like the stuff that like, that Google Voice has been doing, it's I mean, it's amazing. It is, it can make phone calls for you that have just very human like pauses and and sighs, just very human like expressions. Now, I mean, obviously the level of intelligence and sophistication of the movie Her, we're obviously not there yet, but we certainly have the technology to start delivering those kind of experiences, and in some cases even are. I think a lot of call centers and stuff like that are soon going to be filled with, there'll be a lot less people and a lot more of these like very human sounding bots, for lack of a better word. That, and I think Her's a great movie. And I think, I think we're not that far from that, from that reality. Now, I don't know about the ending to that movie, which I won't give away. No spoilers here, but but definitely, if you haven't seen that movie, it's really good.
Yeah,
and I'll plug one more movie, which is Frank and Robot. Frank is an elderly gentleman whose son buys him a robot to help him live where he lives. but the deal is that Frank is also a jewel thief, and convinces the robot to help him commit more crimes. Really great movie too.
Yeah. Teresa was asking about a new movie. Yeah, Teresa, we have to watch the movie and discuss it. We discussed neuroscience, and I was about to say something about neuroscience because with her, it's clear that she analyzes or uses his past experiences, which are common to all human beings, and build all the dialogues from there. So, oh, you sound sad. May I do something to cheer you up? And then this is the seducing part, because she's trying to make him happy, and it's all about him all the time, which is something that our brain loves.
Right. I mean, yeah. Who had like? There's almost no relationship, that is as like completely focused on you, as you could have in with her.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think of other kind of books or movies in that same style. If you haven't, I mean, some of the best like near future books that I've read are there's two by Ian McDonald is the name of the author, and one is called The Dervish House, and that is set in Istanbul, and River of Gods is the other one, which is set in Mumbai in India. He has another one that is set. He has another one that's set in Brazil. I don't think that one's as good as the other two, unfortunately. But he is very good at looking at current trends and making them into really, really interesting fiction.
Okay, I found him here on Amazon, so I am sending to people. Ian.
Yeah, River of Gods and Dervish House is the other one.
Okay. More things to read during this time. Oh my God.
There's never a never-ending stream of things to read.
Yeah.
So that's why that's almost why I'm not even writing it. I mean, there's so many design books coming out now, I can't even keep up with them. So
I told my therapist that I was feeling like sinking in knowledge, like, oh my God, so much, I am overwhelmed, and thinking like that. And she told me, just navigate through that, because that will be easier. And I was like, it was like a big insight, because this feeling of becoming overwhelmed with the amount of information was something that was making me anxious. And she told me, just
I mean, that's one thing that I miss. I mean, about since we don't really have conferences right now, or if we do, they're online, and it's a different thing. So I always felt like conferences were the way, like, for me to like, what do I need to know this year? Like, here's the block of it, like, or what do I need to know, going forward? Like, this is, I'm assuming that most conferences are a distillation of a lot of the most recent stuff that people are thinking about and talking about. So I miss that experience. So
I miss the crowd. I miss being stuck in a line. I mean, all the things I hated. No, I miss.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, all this, all the things that, I think about, like, with conferences, all the most important stuff is almost always like the hallway conversations or the conversations you have over dinner or those kinds of things that, that you like really remember, or it's like, oh yeah, now I know that person. And so,
just to close our conversation, when I look at the foreword of Microinteractions from Don Norman, he was talking about the conference we did here in Brazil, because he would say, well, I met Dan in Brazil and you were at the same time. So it happened there.
it did.
Oh my God, I felt part of that.
You definitely were. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was like, yeah, I don't, like, because we'd asked him to write the forward beforehand, figuring that it would be something that he would like, and he was kind of like, nah, I'm too busy for this. And then he saw the talk, and was like, oh yeah, I like this. So I haven't seen him for a while. I mean, I think he's been really busy setting up his new school.
Yes.
So, but yeah, he's something. I mean,
Yes, he
he's
is something. Always, always
God,
criticizing everything, complaining.
and God bless him. He's still going. He's got to be 85 now, like, or at least in his 80s.
86.
86. Yeah. So I mean, I mean, if I could be still writing books and doing the stuff he does at 86, I'd be very happy. But but he loves it. He loves it. I mean, yeah.
I asked him when he was here in 2012. I asked him because he was starting a company with his son.
With his son, yeah.
Yeah, and I asked him, but Professor, why are you doing that? You don't have to do so for any reason whatsoever. And he told me, and why not? And at that moment, I understood that the life ends when it ends, not when you say it ends. Because I had ingrained in my culture, because of my culture, that there is a time to work and a time to retire, and then you become old, and then you are whatever, you are disposable, pretty much.
Right,
And
you're gone. Yeah,
you're gone. And he told me, don't do that. And I turned 60 this year, and I don't feel like I am doing that anytime soon. I feel
no,
recharged.
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously things get, it's harder to rally the energy and stuff like that to do stuff as you get older. But I mean, I think just staying curious and being open to new opportunities, I think is the trick, right? Like, hey, I never thought I'd be interested in that, but okay, let's see where it goes. And I think that's a great way to kind of live your life, and it's a great way to be a designer too, right? Like, that's I have my tattoo, which way?
Ooh.
That way.
Yeah,
So all life is an experiment, and so it's like, hey, keep trying new stuff and see what happens.
Well, with that phrase, we will end this conversation because it's philosophical. And
That's right.
I want to thank you a lot for coming, for giving us the time to talk with you. People were so excited about having you in this interview. And for me, it was a pleasure because I haven't seen you since, oh my gosh, a long time. 2012, pretty much 8 years.
Yeah, no. We must have seen each other since that's at some conference for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yes, true. On the other IXDA conference,
One of
a
them, yeah,
couple of years ago.
exactly.
Well, so many
But right,
conferences, and now
so
they
many
are
companies.
online. Yeah, yeah. Well, we had in the past, and now we have these online things that don't. Nah, nah, nah,
It's not the
nah.
same. It is just
It's
not the
not the
same.
same. Well, hoping for the
All
best.
right. Thanks for having
Yes.
me.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye.